of the Omaha Council Bluffs Metropolitan Area Planning Agency. Oh.
Good to know.
Thumbs up with this device there. Item A is a roll call introductions. Liz?
Supervisor Scott Belt. Mayor Rusty Height.
Here.
Mayor Doug Hindig.
Here.
Commissioner Chris Rogers.
Here.
Councilmember Don Rowe.
Here.
Mayor Gene Stothard. Supervisor Carol Benton. Here. Mayor Matt Walsh.
Here.
Item B is the
I'm done. I'm done.
Oh, oh, do I have your name, but Commissioner David Clue.
I'll move on to agenda item B, which is approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? Liz?
Height.
Yes.
Clue.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Benton. Yes. Walsh.
Yes.
Hindig.
Yes. Item C is the board minutes of the August 24th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve or accept?
Second. I'm sorry, first.
Questions or discussion? Liz?
Height.
Yes.
Clue.
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Benton. Yes. Walsh.
Yes.
Hindig.
Yes. Move on to agency reports. Start with Mike.
Sure thing. So a couple of things that I didn't include in the slides because they're quite brief, but there was a call to Sarpy County Chamber today and an update from Congressman Flood on some of the information that he's heard from the district. First and foremost, being the leading government shutdown and some of the challenges there. For MAPA, the impact isn't as severe as maybe some of our other partners. Our highway trust fund dollars that we get for our transportation planning funds aren't affected by the government shutdown. Those are kind of a secured fund. And so these things don't impact kind of our staff operations or the reimbursability of most of our costs, but it does slow down our partners at the federal level. The other piece was, he continued to echo his support for a lot of the work that MAP is doing in coordination with our Sarpy County partners and the Nebraska Department of Transportation on the I-80 interchange and the planning for infrastructure needs in Sarpy County. So it's just good that the congressional delegation is aware of that. We're in the sort of planning and study period right now within DOT doing kind of the technical work to understand that interchange from a called an interchange justification report or interchange access report, kind of a sort of one piece of the process to get towards building a interchange in Sarpy County. But just an update there. The other piece I wanted to highlight is with the Canadian wildfires this summer, one of the things that we're keeping our eye on is our status in terms of air quality as a region. If you look at Midwestern states, there have been hundreds of days of going above the regulated value for ground level ozone and for particulate matter. And there are impacts to MAPA's transportation planning process and other things that if the EPA doesn't throw those values out, there could be some concerns in years 2 and 3. There's kind of a 3-year rolling average that they use to assess that. This year is just terrible for these Midwestern states. Region 7 has indicated that they're at least evaluating throwing out those values for this summer. But again, with kind of the recurrence of wildfires during the summer months, it's something we're keeping our eye on and working closely with Douglas County Health Department and other air quality regulators to understand those impacts and advocate. But just so you all know, we're keeping our eye on that front as well. We had our NADTC, this is the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center Summit on August 25th. This was the day after our board meeting last month. We highlighted this, but we held it at the Revive Center up here on North 24th Street. We had, Carlos, I don't know how many people were in there, 22 folks from the community to talk about some of the challenges for people with disabilities, some of the challenges for folks with who are aging and access to transportation. We had great partnership with Metro Transit on this project, but also some of our CTC members, including La Vista. I think Council Bluffs was there as well. SWITA, the provider for transit, was in the room to kind of hear about all these barriers and these needs. And so this was one of 6 of these kind of convenings around the country. They're rolling it up and kind of considering it a national conference, but having these sort of local perspectives built into that. Staff put together the final report, so kudos to Carlos and Travis for really heading up that effort and helping us deliver what I think was a really unique event. On the sort of regional side of things, the city of Omaha, as we've mentioned before, applied for and received $1 million for the climate pollution reduction grant funds to complete the climate action plan. For those of you who follow in the news, the city of Omaha has, was kind of on a path to do this. This funding became available, and so they're utilizing this to facilitate their climate action plan with about half of that $1 million award. The requirements of accepting that funding, though, require that it's a regional approach, particularly in terms of the data inventory and the strategies and understanding what the possibility of those things might be. And so they are awarding about $250,000 of that funding to MAPA to help facilitate those conversations. So for those of you, really everybody here in the room, it's the 8-county MSA that we're going to be doing this outreach. So we're going to be reaching out to all of you and your staff to understand, what local priorities can make sure end up in this regional plan. And the other thing that happened earlier this week is that the phase 2 implementation dollars were announced. And so because the city of Omaha opted into this $1 million planning grant, all the communities in the 8-county region are eligible for these phase 2 dollars. It's about $4.6 billion worth of funding available for a broad range of investments, largely focused on greenhouse gas reduction. That's kind of the main focus of these implementation dollars. We're just digging into what's available. I mean, the NOPO is it's dozens and dozens of pages long with lots of eligible activities. But as we go out and we start making contact with local agencies, we're going to make sure that we have this kind of front of mind, ensuring that those are reflected in the plan and that communities are able. So the initial planning product that MAPA will be helping lead is due in April of next year, or excuse me, March of next year. The funding notice applications are due in April. And so they're really linking this planning process to eligibility for these funding things. And that's going to be the main focus that we're going to be going through as we work with our regional partners in Iowa and Nebraska. So very tight timeline. This is a very unique program. I've never seen anything like this. It wasn't competitive to get the dollars. They took the top 64 metro areas around the country and they said, would you like $1 million to do a climate action plan? Some communities said yes, some communities said no. They gave $3 million to the state. Some states said yes, some states said no, and then the remaining funds were available to other communities that didn't meet that minimum qualification size to do this same effort. So it's going to be a bit of a frenzied process. We're working from a very short timeline, but everything's and so we're going to be diving into that work here this morning. An update on the NIROC aerial photography project. We have moved forward with the contracting process for pictometry. So Pictometry is the firm that we have been contracting with for this project since its inception. But again, kind of just an update on this. This is one of those joint purchases that MAPA helps facilitate on behalf of our county partners and some of our local government partners. We have all 6 counties participating in this go around for NIROC, and so we're excited about that. And we're also going to be shifting away from doing just every 2-year collection, every other year collection, to having an option for people to opt in on every year. Because we have some of our larger counties, Douglas and Sarpy County in particular, that really want that imagery on a more routine basis. By having those flights happen, we can bring other regional partners in. So smaller counties like Mills County wouldn't have been able to participate in the past because they wanted to do it every 3 years. We were on a 2-year schedule. This gives us the flexibility to kind of meet people where they are. So we're excited about that. It's going to be a big project. Again, here for the next 6 years, and we'll be having that contract, I believe, next month coming to board for your consideration as well. Other events, I touched on the Rural Summit that was being held in September. Supervisor Benson was there with me down in Carson. Here's some projects from Western Iowa, and some really kind of key topics of entrepreneurship, community engagement, and also, access to kind of the outdoors and recreation and how Southwest Iowa is really thriving and making those investments. It was a good event. We had made some good connections and connected with people I haven't talked to in a while, but was excited to see Supervisor Benton and some of our other colleagues from Potawatomi and Mills County down there as well. And then just one update as well, on the same day that we are having our annual meeting, a very sort of targeted invitation has gone out to staff around the region for this innovative financing workshop. And so because of the folks who are presenting at the annual meeting in the evening, we're having a workshop really focused on some of these innovative financing tools that are available to local governments that leverage federal dollars, that leverage some of the flexibility available through the Build America Bureau, and really trying to really figure out what would work in Nebraska, what would work in some of our Iowa communities, and really kind of developing some of that understanding about what's available. We've seen a lot of change in terms of Nebraska law and some projects in Iowa that have been able to use some of these new contracting tools. This is the federal version of that, a little bit of a staff development, but that if you believe your staff is interested, they probably are already received an invitation, but let me know if we can connect anybody to that opportunity, because it is very unique, and so we're excited to be hosting that. And then just another reminder, Wednesday, October 4th in the evening, down at Bellevue Berry Farm, we will be having our annual meeting. Peter in Koskis, am I saying that right? Yeah, Peter Koskis from FHWA will be presenting on really, accelerating infrastructure investments, some of those, key perspectives from around the country, and really just trying to, build some support for continuing the work that we hear so often is critically important to our local partners. What are some of the ways that we partner with the federal government to do that? So those are my remarks for today.
Any questions for Mike about? If not, I'll move on to staff updates. Matthew? Sorry, Matthew.
That's fine. Matthew is my official name. Math is actually not my middle name, it's my first name. We're gonna talk a little bit about math here. So I'm going to, rather than just do a general staff update for my department, we're gonna talk about the ERP, the Enterprise Resource Planning package that MAPA is trying to procure and upgrade our financial systems, our business operating systems. And the board had approved a consultant to work with us both in FY23 and into FY24. Barry Dunn is an organization to help us look for and score, properly evaluate an ERP package and vendor. And so they've been doing that, and they also helped us do an RFP, which we executed in June and July. We had, just to kind of give you a synopsis of that, summarize that. We had one vendor, which is not really enough to get a good comparison for a product that could cost us, will cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years before we could have to be life cycled and replaced. So we had asked Barry Dunn to go out and recently and find another, at least one more, if not two, to get the traditional 3 comps. And they did come back with another vendor tentatively. They pitched them just independently, so they're not through any formal process. They did not answer any of our technical questions or follow the protocols of our RFP, but they did do a vague quote. It was not detailed, so I can't really compare it to the formal quote that we have with the other vendor. But I did ask Barry Dunn this week to see if they would do the technical analysis, and they said, yeah, but it'll take us 2 weeks. And we don't really want to, we'd rather come and do a demo. So Mike and I discussed that, and we'll go ahead and have them come in and do a demo, and we'll just ask them most of the technical questions during the demo. I don't have a date yet when that's going to happen. It could be as early as 2 weeks from today. So, or thereabouts. It would be during the right after the Columbus Day weekend. And then if that happens, we'll evaluate. Then we can actually formally score the two, because we'll be able to compare apples to apples and that. And then at that point, assuming we can get that demo performed before October board or and October Finance Committee for that matter, present those findings to you of those two. And then if those findings, if we think they're reasonable, we'll ask the board for a decision on one or the other. And in that time, we may get another one, but it's not looking very favorable from our consultants as to whether or not, because they've been asking and they're not getting a response. And we talked a little bit about this the last time that we had discussion, and primarily this again, we don't know because we're not getting solid feedback from the industry. But MAPA is small. MAPA has a small, operating equity. We show on our books about $7 million per year in the value, if you will, of the agency. And so these vendors look at that and say, you're probably can only afford this much. They do their metrics and they think we can only afford, so much. And they decide it's not worth their time. That's what our consultants believe is the reason for the lack of interest. We're just.
Do they know what we're worth, Matt?
Well, they know those kinds of numbers. We tell them, we put that in the
Got it.
RFP that
Okay.
this is essentially the asset value of the agency.
We don't tell them our budget though, and because we want them to tell us what
That's right.
services cost. And
Yeah.
so it's the lack of providing them with a formal budget for the efforts that they're sort of self-selecting.
Got it. Okay.
And so because of that, it's catch-22. You tell them what you're willing to pay, and of course, that's what the price quote is. And if you don't tell them, then they're not willing to even give you a price quote. So we've had two now. One is, again, it's not qualified because it's essentially a guess at what we might need. It's more of a commercial offer than it is an actual evaluation of our requirements. So we'll have more, after that demo. Hopefully we'll have something formal to put before the board and action. The actions could be pick one or the other, and the board could be neither. Of course, it could be neither. And I guess I want you all to know MAPA can function without the ERP solution. It is not critical, like the agency is going to fail if we do not do this. The agency is not efficient, and we are, we're at risk of certain audit compliance issues that I brought up as higher risk for our internal controls primarily. And so there are risks that MAPA incurs by not having a competent financial and business management system. And that system doesn't have to all be automated. Some of it could be, manual, but we have essentially a hodgepodge, just like a lot of small agencies do, of things and band-aid fixes over the years to get to where we are. And so it's very human oriented. And if one of those humans who happens to be extremely skilled and probably irreplaceable were to leave, then MAPA does another risk. So I've identified those, and that's why we need an ERP, essentially to automate a lot of functions to allow for turnover in an agency that's really too small to. But right now we're functional. So if this turns out to where the board does not feel like either, or I should say there could be a third or fourth, who knows, but by next month, if you feel like none of the offers are appropriate, then that is an option to just continue doing nothing.
But we do
No
have
change.
in our budget, right?
So we have a budget currently, because we operate on a one-year budget. We have the funding that's in reserve that the board has specifically by line item authorized enough money to do an implementation. So the implementation is always, I think Commissioner Klug had asked, what does that cost? It could run anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000, depending on the number of software packages and modules that we have to train people on. That's just sort of industry standard. It's really not, it's not so much the size of the agency, but the number of products to train and provide the implementation and the coordination and the configuration. But so that's budgeted as a cash reserve. So that's a one-time cost. And then what we have not formally budgeted is the annual cost, which again, because that's not a formal number, if you want to talk about that, I would recommend we do that in executive session and not an open meeting. But the actual cost is just to kind of give an idea of the industry. It's anywhere from what we currently pay, which is public information, of around a combined effort of around $25,000 to $30,000 a year for all the systems that we use. to anywhere. If we had a Cadillac plan, the industry looks to be around $100,000 to $150,000 a year. Minimum for an agency. We'll just call us the smallest entity that anybody would use. So that's just kind of a ballpark estimate of what we're looking at. Of course, we're trying not to be on the high end of that. But so if the industry just does not going to support anything lower than the high end, then that's a consideration that the board will have to make as to whether it's worth moving forward or not. But as far as whether we could afford that, the answer would be, well, if you say yes, then I'm like, way to afford it. But it could mean, like, choices would be made as to, FTEs, the future of the agency as far as hiring and all those kinds of things, just like we did with our unexpected increase in health insurance. We reduced an FTE that it hadn't been hired yet. We just removed it from our allocation in order to fund that. So those are the kind of choices that we have to make, and then we'll put before the board as the options. So that's all I have right now to give you an update on the ERP selection. Subject to any questions.
Any further questions for Matt? Okay, thank you. Item E is public comments. Liz, did anybody request to address the board?
No.
And I will I didn't read this in, I probably should have. This meeting is conducted in compliance with the Nebraska statute of the Open Meeting Act. The Open Meeting Act is posted on the wall of the board room. Moving on to agenda item F then, which is the consent agenda. Item 1 is the finance committee minutes, and number 2 is a purchase. If you would like to pull one of these off, if not, I would take a motion to approve all. Motion to approve consent agenda. So, is there further questions or discussion? Liz?
Pike,
Yes.
Luke,
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Benton,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kendig.
Yes. Item G, under old business, item 1 is resolution 2024-07, 2024 Transportation Improvement Program, TIP Amendment number 1. Mike, are you reporting on this report?
Yeah. Good afternoon.
I didn't look up and see you there for it, so.
I kind of snuck up there.
Yeah, it's all yours.
All right, so we've got a fairly extensive amendment. Usually the first amendment to the TIP is pretty big, as we're kind of cleaning up all the stuff that kind of putting together the pieces from everything that happened over the summertime. So this TIP was approved by the board back in June. And now that we're crossing over the line into the next federal fiscal year, there's so the first 3 projects you see, 3 projects from Omaha, urban core study, and a couple of other studies, one on Maple Road, one of them is on it's kind of the Northwest Radio, Maple, like that, the Nebraska 30 or 64 area. All of those, they've basically just been initiated into the federal process with MDOT. So those are just had some numbers updated in their project descriptions. Then we've got a few projects that their funding is increasing. I want to highlight that 2 of these projects are actually they were selected under our Transportation Alternatives Program, regional, basically the private head infrastructure funding program that went after some additional funding through state transportation alternatives program. So this is some additional money. It's federal aid controlled by the state of Nebraska. That's they awarded some additional funding to some projects in the region, and that's the Midtown Medical Center bikeway connection going through UNMC, and then also down in Pavilion, Shram Spur N370 undercrossing. So these are 2 bikehead projects that are expanding in scope, enabled by this additional infusion of state TAP funding. And then we've also got a couple of awards for the city of Omaha from MDOT that are using congestion mitigation and air quality funds, another source of federal funding. MAPA does not control it, doesn't even impact our regional program, but so this is kind of an additional infusion of federal funds from MDOT. Then we have a whole bunch of projects that are basically just cleaning up from the previous TIP.
Some projects didn't make it into this tip initially, so we thought they were going to be completed before the end of the summer. That didn't happen, so a number of these are just sliding into the next federal fiscal year. And then there are 2 projects that were in the previous tip that aren't even being shown in the current tip, basically the same situation, that they weren't completed, and now in order for them to get funding to begin in the next federal fiscal year, they need to get added to this tip. There's a few projects that are actually being added to the tip that weren't included in the previous ones, and I want to touch on those real quick. 2 of them are additional congestion mitigation air quality awards to the city of Omaha for signal infrastructure parts, just like those ones that had their faces adjusted in that previous section. And then there are 2 projects. One of them is Omaha's resurfacing program. Omaha usually works with MAPA to kind of do federal aid resurfacing on various roadways. They send us packages each year on which roadways need to be resurfaced. As long as they're federal aid eligible, we kind of roll them into the program, and they go towards the balance of funding that the city gets paid back for in the future. And then additionally, the city of Omaha received a RAISE grant, another federal aid discretionary program for doing an Ames Avenue Safe Mobility Recovery Plan. So they're going to be doing some planning work with that RAISE grant. I think they got about $2 million of federal with that plan. Again, it doesn't impact the regional program under the funds that MAPA controls, but it does. It's basically an infusion of additional federal funds for transportation planning. And then there are 4 projects that have been removed from the tip. These are all related to that resurfacing program that I was just talking about related to the city of Omaha. So back in July, MDOT asked us to participate in August redistribution. I don't want to get too deep into what August redistribution is, but basically we're helping the state out so that they could obligate additional funding this year. It's not any additional funding, it doesn't add to the amount of funding that we can spend. Basically, we just got to spend some money early. So Omaha had 4 projects that had already been completed, and they were just waiting for federal aid repayment. Many of those weren't actually due until 24, 25, and 26. Those have all been moved forward, so those have been repaid. They're kind of off our books, and we basically were just a good partner with MDOT, helping them obligate some additional funding. That's the amendment. If you have any questions about a specific project, I'm happy to answer it. And that was kind of a lot to throw at you. For the most part, not a whole lot of changes. The main things are just that we spent some money early. We got some new state and federal money in, and our regional program, there's not a significant impact here.
Questions or discussion on the report? If not, I would take a motion. No, this is an action item, is it?
Correct.
Yep.
It's action.
It is action?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
I got it. I got a motion in a second. Further discussion? Liz?
Height,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Benton,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kennedy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item H is new business. Item 1 is under travel. Mike, when you did that?
Sure. So this is travel to Holdridge, Nebraska for our statewide associations conference, the all staff retreat. As MAPA, we don't send all staff where we've got kind of a larger sort of organization in some ways than some of our partners, but we are looking to send up to 5 staff as the agenda gets finalized. You know, a couple of our staff are going to be making presentations on GIS and possibly transportation planning. But it's also just a great way for staff to connect with our other economic development district partners across the state. We've learned several things over the years from our partners, like the community needs assessment that we've been doing in Valley and other things. But it's a good way of learning about issues across the state, learning about issues that affect us from the legislature, learning about programs and implementations. It's good professional development for our team. So that total estimate there is up to $1,300.
Motion to approve. Motion Bellevue.
Any further question or discussion? Liz?
Height,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Benton, Walsh,
Yes.
Kennedy.
Yes. And then under item I, discussion item number 1 is reconnecting the communities and neighborhoods grant program. Carlos.
Hi, just a quick congratulations. We submitted an application for Reconnecting Communities pilot program sponsored by FHWA. This application is really for a neighborhood access and equity program funding. And we're looking at studying the North Freeway between Cuming Street and Sorensen. Our partners in this application were the City of Omaha, Spark, Metro Transit, and Nebraska Department of Transportation. This will continue the work that we are currently doing with the same partners on our Thriving Communities technical assistance. The idea is to have community input and discussion about what should we do on the North Freeway. It's been long evidence that it has been an area of displacement, redlining, and a lot of social disparities that we're trying to resolve. And so we're going to look at it through planning, environmental linkages, study methodology, which we've used before here in Suffolk County. And that is pretty much all I have right now. The application was submitted today. We will likely, hopefully, hear back spring of 2024.
And I would just note too, if you look at MAPA's regional project selection, we identified priority corridors, and the Highway 75 corridor, since we've had those corridors across the region, has been a priority corridor. And we recently did the study that was funded by the Nebraska legislature, kind of the north part of Highway 75. The urban core work looked at kind of the 480 and 75 section near downtown. MAPA partnered with DOT during MTIS to look at closures of interchanges along Highway 75 in South Omaha, and some of the public engagement has started there. And then working with Bellevue on the Fort Crook Road corridor, the former Highway 75 corridor, to think about that connectivity. And with the level of investment going on in areas of North Omaha with the 24th Street transit study, all the work that the City of Omaha has led on the 30th Street corridor, this is really the only section of Highway 75 that doesn't have some sort of transportation vision associated with it. So kind of to coordinate that process, to make use of resources that are available to facilitate this conversation, and really the willingness of partners, we're excited to move this forward. So very big effort. And Carlos didn't mention, were we to be successful with this grant, it's 100% federal dollars. So there's no local.
I buried the lead.
Yeah.
It's 100% federal funding.
So another one of these opportunities to really take a conversation that's already happening within the community, provide some resources, in the future to move it towards it.
Any further questions for Carlos or Mike? If not, thank you, Carlos. Is there any additional business or any comments from any of the board members? No? Well, with that, I will call the meeting adjourned. Everybody have a good day. Thank you.
Before 2:15 there.